Stay connected with Fiat Ministry Network. Like us on Facebook. Stay updated at fiatministrynetwork.tv/feed. Follow us on Twitter at Fiat Ministry Net. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Fiat Ministry Network. Fiat Ministry Network, encouraging all to say yes to Jesus Christ.
Welcome to the Fiat Ministry Show, episode 79. I need to have my audio just turn on too. Welcome everybody in the chat room. Welcome everybody watching live and on the recording on our YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Fiat Ministry Network. Also, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and check our upcoming shows every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're also going to try to do some other shows throughout the week. I think, it's good to have maybe more than one show at a time weekly. We're trying to get back into that. I used to do, believe it or not, 5 shows a week, and that was a lot, but I think 2 shows is not too much. I'm gonna make sure that's okay with the wife. If you do hear any yelling in the background, the Cavaliers are playing the first game of the finals with the Warriors, Golden State. So go Cavs. I will put that in. I know this is not a sporting show, but we are Cleveland area, and I am a huge NBA fan, so I'm very excited about hopefully they have a good win tonight. Anyways, thank you everybody in the chat room. I guess 231 and Missy, welcome. I just want to say this is the show tonight is very interesting in the sense of a author's coming on to talking about his book, and we have to I think nowadays there's so much stuff that's going on in the Catholic Church. I think we're going to be talking about that, and I think Tim will be a great guest tonight to just talk about the faith and his book. And we'll, make sure you check out all the notes through their website, and make sure you make sure you buy one. And also, we have about 511 entries in the giveaway. So that's really exciting. We got 22 minutes. If you go on to the Facebook page, you can find the link. I've had it through Twitter and other locations. I can send it through the Facebook, the chat right now, as I will do. So everybody in the chat room, if you want to try to win, you got 22 so minutes left. And I also just want to thank, everything that's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of stuff with our faith, and, the president going to meet Pope Francis and everything of, there's a lot of stuff that he did through his trip, and I think we're going to be working on a show to bring in our faith and politics and kind of, mix that up. And I have a couple people that will, be, we're thinking about an idea of working on a show like that, and that's coming up. But right now, I'm going to do a quick prayer make sure you subscribe and all that to our social medias. Again, I can't say that enough. If you can financially donate to the website or the ministry and the website on the website, I think the best place is right at the top. It should be at the upper right corner of the website. There's a PayPal account. There's a couple other places too, but we always take your prayers. Always prayers are vital in this kind of ministry that we do. So I'll do a quick prayer and we'll have Tim on and we'll start the show. And in the name of the Father and the Son and Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, thank you tonight. Thank you for our guest Tim, and thank you everybody in the chat room and everybody that will be watching on their own time. Thank you for our gifts of life and just, being Catholic and having that way of celebrating the fullness of the truth, and bless again our leaders and people that protect us. I think that sometimes we take them for granted, but please protect them and bless our families and keep everyone safe throughout just everything that's going on in the world. There's just so much can be given to you as a surrender. And in your name we pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. We will now welcome on Tim to the show.
I could start out by telling you that I'm not a cradle Catholic. I'm not sure what I'm a cradle of, but my church life as a child was spotty. We didn't go to church much, it was kind of, we'd go to this church a couple of times, and, for some reason we end up at another church, and it was just, there's a couple of things in my childhood that I remember. I was at a doctor's visit one time, and I was maybe 5 years old, and they were going to draw some blood from me, which I was not looking forward to. And they said, "Do you know what kind of blood he has?" And I said, "I got Christian blood." So at that tender young age, I was either being really opportunistic, or I was at least aware of the fact that I was something that, was called a Christian. The example of my father was very strong in my faith life. I would always remember him after he was retired, sitting at the kitchen table when I would wake up in the morning, and he would be there with his cup of coffee, and he would be reading his Bible every morning. And that was one of the foundations for me, that is the Bible, just Holy Scripture. I was given that example that that was something special, beautiful, something meaningful. If my father was doing this first thing in the morning when I got up, it was something that must be important. And he left me with that. And I've with every year, I'm almost 60 now, with every year that goes by, I find myself valuing the comfort and wisdom and just the closeness to God of reading Holy Scripture. So I became interested in the Catholic Church when I was a teenager, and I was given a copy of the Dutch Catechism, and I still became a Catholic. I must not have read very much of it, but my catechism was kind of very informal. There wasn't really a formal RCIA program or anything back in those days.
Yeah.
I had a few meetings with the priest, and was baptized and anointed, and I became a Catholic, and I think I was probably about maybe 16 years old, maybe, which was providential because my wife of 40 years now was Catholic, and so I didn't get married in order to, marry my wife. Certainly not. If there's anything wrong with that. That's a wonderful reason. But it was providential, I think, because that was certainly not an obstacle when we met in Latin class. And I finally worked up enough courage to ask my wife, Catherine, who I jokingly refer to in my blog as Red Death. She's a red-haired Irish beauty. So then I was a Catholic, and we went to mass together as we dated, and we grew up together. We were married when I always get this wrong and make us younger, and I'll just say I was 19 and she was 18. I think that's probably close enough. But we were young. We raised each other, as young kids do, and the first thing I did was join the Army. I was an Arabic linguist, went to DLI, we went to California. And in fact, after basic training, the first thing I did was we got married, and then I was gone again, and had to wait a while for her to join me in California while I was learning Syrian dialect. Wow. And we went to mass at the Carmel Mission, which was very beautiful, very historic. And then we went to Texas. Went to Goodfellow Air Force Base to learn crypto stuff, and we were very active in the church there. There was the charismatic movement was kind of a big thing there.
Yeah,
and we learned about that and experienced that, and it's something that I'm glad we did experience. I'm not sure that's necessarily a part of my life and my faith life in the same way as it was then. But we continued. I mean, we were young kids, but we stuck together with the church as we finished. I finished the Army, and eventually I was in radio and I was in law enforcement. And then I finally got around to going back to college and got a history degree. And then I went to law school, which then I went in the Navy. I was with the Navy JAG Corps, so I'm Army and Navy. That's why on Army Navy, the game I feel very conflicted about.
Yeah, I know exactly.
But just kind of to finish, bring us up to the present.
Yeah.
There were some times when we were absent from the church too. In fact, we were Orthodox for a while, for various reasons, which some viewers may or may not be familiar with. But there have been times in the church in recent decades when I think Catholics have felt some confusion, and may have. The Orthodox Church was pretty darn tempting to us at the time. I'm sorry, I've been running noise. No, we were actually Orthodox for a number of years, and I really can't say anything negative about that experience. I think it enriched us in a lot of ways, and you can see over my shoulder we still have an icon corner. I think icons are a very beautiful part of the Christian tradition. But then I decided that I was a Western man. I was not Eastern. I was not Russian. And I just really felt convicted that I belonged to Rome. I belonged to Peter. This was where I was born, and whatever reservations I had about anything going on, that's where I wanted to be. And I'm not even going to say I wanted to be there, because in a lot of ways, my heart is still with Orthodoxy in a sentimental sort of way. But it was actually a feast of Day of Our Lady of Guadalupe that I
Wow.
I was separated from my family for work reasons a couple hours away. That was kind of tough, but it was in Belleville, Illinois, which is the Rome of the West. And there's Catholic mass schedules there. It's like bus schedules anywhere else. There are just so many Catholic churches in such a small area that I went, and we came back into the Catholic Church, and that's where I've remained. Now, on my blog, I have my catchphrase is, nail your foot to the floor in front of your favorite pew and die there. And that is kind of kind of summarizes a lot of some of the conflicted things I feel about the church. Some parishes are different than others. Some are more modernist.
Yes.
All Catholics know that.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I do feel like I have to nail my foot to the floor to stay.
Uh-huh.
But that is the catchphrase of my blog, and
that's a no. I think that's just one thing, Tim, that we all need to hear ourselves sometimes, because I can definitely vouch for times where I need to nail my feet to the floor, because you're so busy. I think sometimes you get so caught up in I'm caught up with the basketball game, but I mean, there's a thing there. I think when we're doing this, you're kind of, talking about our faith or going to mass. It's kind of a way of, just relaxing and knowing that, there's more to this world than a basketball game or anything that's going on. Of course, our family and staying with our families and being close to our families, but I think that's a great motto that we need to think about every time that we do go to mass, and kind of take our time focusing throughout that time. And I know there was, you were a, defense attorney, and you've done a ton of, and now you're an author, and you, how many books have you, is this your number one first book, or have you written other things? I know you're blogging and all that, but what else have you been doing?
Well, this is Judging Angels.
Yep.
I'll make sure show product in hand, here.
Uh-huh.
It's a very and the first things people are probably wondering is, did he pick up the right book? We'll talk about some of the counter marketing and some of the things I wanted to avoid, but that I think are kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But this is my first book. And I wrote it 33 times. Over a period of about a number of years, and it didn't get to its final finished version until we were editing right up till publication, because I wanted it to be right. It's not something I wrote just to entertain people, although I hope it does. I had some very specific moral themes that I wanted to deal with, that I think are not neglected, but people always need to be reminded of. And I wanted to do it in the context of a novel that was not a Catholic novel, because, to tell you the truth, I was on Facebook today and I said, I will prove that this is the most Catholic novel ever since, and I couldn't think of a single Catholic. I'm sure I have. But as far as a Catholic novel, I can't remember the last. I've read Charles Williams. Is that a Catholic novel? I don't know. So I kind of wanted to counter market it as a book for Catholics but that wasn't a Catholic novel. That deals with moral themes and issues that are current in the church, even in a way that's organic to a conventional story about what I know best, which is murdering people. Not from, I mean, you know, from the defense point of view. Right. And I did prosecute a case too. So, I mean, that's what my career was for 30 years, was a criminal trial lawyer. And so that's what I know about. That's what I wanted to, that's what I figured I had to write about, because that's the only thing I knew about.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead. No. I mean, the only thing I wanted to ask, and I was thinking about this, and we'll keep continuing on talking about the book, but I was thinking, just as a, you know, defense attorney, and, you know, seeing, you know, basically talking to people about, you know, murderers, that, you know, do you see throughout those years, and I kind of am kind of curious, this is a question off topic that we've, you know, prior to the show talking about, but do you see Jesus more in people, even from those days of, you know, with criminal, you know, crimes that are just, you know, murders? Can you see in them, you know, more as a, you know, is it easier for you to see Jesus in others? I just kind of think in that kind of sense that you're seeing these, in the sense, in most people's eyes, evil people that are doing evil things out in the world. But does that help you kind of see Jesus in them even more than where we kind of have to struggle, like, that person did this, and like, how do you defend, or why would you even want to try to do that? Is that something, I know I'm rambling at this moment, but
no, that's a great question. It really is. And the death penalty prosecution / defense community in Illinois is, I mean, less than 0.1% of lawyers were even allowed to do death penalty cases after the reforms went in, which I played some role in. I was on the committee selection. The Supreme Court asked me to help pick and train death penalty lawyers. It was all part of a really good set of reforms, because we were having a lot of trouble with getting a few too many innocent people on death row. But, you know, that is such a great question, because now I'm a staunch conservative. That's how I describe myself in every way, every other way, you know. But it seems like the death penalty, for some reason, is a litmus test for conservatives. I never got that. I just don't. My first death penalty case I actually prosecuted. I put someone on death row. Now the sentence was later commuted, but so I didn't come to the death penalty defense as a liberal or someone who felt like, you know, I really want to defend downtrodden, innocent people, because I had done a lot of criminal work before, you know, death penalty work, and I got a big secret to let you know. Most of them did it. I probably shouldn't say that. You know, it is true. No, yeah. So and you ask about, I got to tell you, just for whatever reason, the best death penalty lawyers that I knew in Illinois, and I ranged all the way up from Chicago down to the very tip of the state in Cairo, are Catholic for some reason. And I've given that some thought, and I think that's because Catholics get it in a way that a lot of people don't. And I'm not against the death penalty, because the church, you know, the catechism now says that, you know, that we shouldn't do it. Pope Francis recently said that it's a mortal sin, which I frankly don't exactly understand how a legal sanction can be a mortal sin itself. But I have a colleague named John O'Gara, who's a very, very well-known attorney in Illinois, especially in the southern part where I am. He's out of Belleville, and we did a case together that was Chris Coleman, and it was a huge case. It was a horrible case. This is a man who wanted to marry a dog track waitress down in Florida, and he worked for Joyce Myers, who was he was a security manager for Joyce Myers, who's a televangelist, a big name apparently, out of St. Louis. And her policy was that you could not be divorced and work for her. So that left him with the choice of murdering his beautiful wife and his two children, his two little boys, and desecrating their bodies to make it look like it was like psychos came and did it helter skelter. And of course, I'm not going to go further with this. I don't, your listeners don't need to hear this or want to hear it. But the point was, this was as horrible as it gets. This is as bad as it gets. And John O'Gara was interviewed in the paper, and defense lawyers are always asked we always hear two things. One, you ought to write a book. And the second one is, how can you defend these people? And John O'Gara gave the greatest answer. He says, because I see the face of Jesus Christ in Chris Coleman. And you do. And I don't know if I think it's easy when an experience that I once had, if you don't mind if I tell you this little story that I was sitting at watching TV, and I saw this news story about this guy doing the perp walk. He had murdered a little boy, and I looked at him and I said, man, how could that guy he probably deserves the death penalty. I mean, this is a really bad guy. And in my living room, knowing nothing about this guy except what the 10 seconds I saw that was, of him going into the courtroom and hearing about this, seeing the picture of the cute little boy and all that, and not having any responsibility for my opinion, I was like anyone else. That was my gut reaction, and I totally get that. Well, the trick God played on me was that I ended up being his defense lawyer in the death penalty case. And the prosecutor said, Jesus Christ will come again before I will come off the death penalty. That was his big headline piece. And I worked that case very, very hard. And my team eventually got him to come off the death penalty after we won a change of venue, which is next to impossible to do, at least where I'm from. So I think the lesson of that is that when all you know about a person is the worst thing they ever did in their life, it's easy to say, I'm for the death penalty. But I bet that most of your listeners, who are probably most for the death penalty, I bet if they got to know these people the way a defense lawyer does, because we have to know them better than anyone. Ernst Bruni was his name. I knew him better than his mother. I knew him better than his girlfriend. I knew him better than he himself did, because it was my job to be able to present to the jury, not an excuse for what he did, certainly, but this is his background. This is how this happened. And this is who he is. He's not just this person. We did a phone survey, and the good people of Johnson County, and this was very innovative on my part, I actually allowed them to leave a message. And oh my gosh, I played these messages in court, and I'll never forget the guy that said, I think he should be killed, his body chopped up in little pieces, thrown in a dumpster. Have a nice day. and that was, that's what most people would think when they see the picture of the little kid and this awful guy. But I saw Jesus. I saw the image of God in him, and I do in everyone. And I think that my death, and certainly my death penalty experience has gifted me with that.
No, and I think that's the the question, and we'll get back to the book, and I apologize for rerouting that question, but I think that's very important because I was kind of driving home and throughout the day thinking about the show tonight, and I always thought that was the most important thing that I think that you would be able to do compared to someone like me, where I'm looking at someone doing something like that. I mean, we've had in the Cleveland area some horrible situations, but and I hear are the horrible. I mean, and they have something in their head that is, not right, to do stuff like that. But you have to, if you're really focusing on Jesus Christ and you want to be someone that is, look at your enemies as Jesus Christ. I mean, that's a very hard thing to do. I mean, people that are not my friends at times, I mean, people that just bug me and, they're, are they, okay, Jesus, are you there?
As a lawyer,
Hello?
I have to advise you not to go too far here. Go ahead.
I mean, no, it's all right. I mean, you sometimes see like, okay, how do you see Jesus and everyone? But I think in what you've done, it's very, it has to be part of the job too, because you're on a different side of the situation that the media is portraying of the person. And that's I appreciate that answer. And just going back to the book, I know you wanted to maybe read a little bit because people were I'm getting questions.
Oh,
how
yeah.
Catholic is this book? And I think you started the conversation. If you wanted to bring up like the first paragraph that you wanted to read about, or anything that you would want to continue on about judging angels, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'll try to get now. Oh, by the way, this is a very special autographed copy to a very good blog friend of mine in the St. Corbinian's Bear blog. We have I'm a bear, and we have the Woodlands, and my blog fans have adopted various animals, and so this is Badger. And so they comment as their animals, which is kind of fun for everybody. Yeah. So this is to my very special friend Badger, who was one of my readers. I had I had more than two, but two better readers who were just brutal on the draft. I said, I mean, they were just like, I was like, well, I'll just kind of throw this in the fireplace and forget my whole career as a novelist. But boy, were they spot on. They helped me so much. Huh? They helped. I mean, and I took their advice to heart. And it's thanks to Badger and Nightingale and some of the other readers that gave me really good advice and brutal advice. Judging Angels is the book I'm proud to see in print that I wouldn't have been before. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So this is Badger. This is your special book that I'm going to be reading the very first 3 chapters of. No, just kidding. This is the beginning. One of the things about Judging Angels that I think is fun is that it defeats readers' expectations at every turn. Just when you think you recognize a trope, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen next. I do the opposite. Just when you think someone's safe, don't get too attached to anyone. Not right up to the last page. I mean, the 2 things people have said about it is that, and by the way, the response has been terrific. Yeah, I'm very happy to see that it's a page turner. That's the first term, and the other is that it's full of twists and turns and surprises, which is exactly what I wanted. One guy who was a very critical reviewer on Amazon generally gave it 5 stars and said he blew through it in 3 days. Now, This is this is a 500-page, 1.8-pound baby. So that's I got to hand it to him for that. But let me go ahead with a little bit. I'll introduce you to Chapter 1, Last Things. It was the day of very last things. A well-dressed man approaching the street squirmed against a morning sun that offered brightness but not warmth. He knew that today his old adversary, death, would collect 150,600 souls and no one would notice, just like every other day. If a tsunami took them all at once, it would be a tragedy. People would question the existence of God. Let an attractive white woman be murdered and she's a celebrity. Somebody else dies of colon cancer and nobody cares. George Abel held the proper unsentimental perspective on death. Everybody dies one at a time and in the dark. And that was all. The rest is just selling the news. Most people die surprised, at least murder victims, which were his specialty. He had seen it in their eyes, not wildly surprised, but mildly. Not condemned men, though, and not him. Today held no surprises at all for him. On this very last Christmas Eve, it was George Abel who held all the surprises. He shot his arm from the sleeve of his black wool dress coat, exposing a cheap watch that rattled loosely on his wrist bones. It was unreliable, but today it did not matter. He had looked at it out of habit. When he ran out of time, that was it. He stepped off the curb. He heard a long squeal of tires in the dilated instant that is said to precede death, and then slowly turned his head before the horn blared in his ears. A large black car, it looked as big as a hearse to him, was a hand's breadth from his leg. Behind the windshield, an angry woman with red hair was yelling at him in silence. He caught a whiff of burning rubber. He patted the hood, gave an embarrassed wave, then jogged across the street as if to make up for the time lost, almost getting himself killed. What was the etiquette anyway when you stepped in front of a car? You had to laugh, so there was one surprise. He had almost been killed on the morning before Christmas in the decorated town square of Winterthur, Illinois. The universe had foresmelled blood, or maybe just the freezing sweat on the back of his neck. It would be the very last time he walked up those steps ahead. He had been thinking about all the very last things since he woke up. That last first cup of coffee, last shave, last time he opened his eyes after sleep. Had he really slept? Death, judgment, heaven, hell, purgatory. There intruded from an old catechism last things of a different sort. George had always possessed a sticky brain that made memorizing effortless, but today it seemed a liability. Somehow the familiar words had taken on a portentive life of their own. So, you tell me, Catholic book or not?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, and that's the, I think the writing is, in the sense that you do want, you need to read the book. You need to do the auto. That catches me more. It was like, it's great. I think.
Thank you. Maybe I will.
I think that might be what you. Yeah, it's definitely the way. But I think what you're doing, you're bringing in parts of the faith into the book. I think you're trying to get the morals. What are some of the, things that you are getting? The feedback is good, and I've seen it, like you're saying. I've been reading, the credits or the comments that you've been getting. Where has it been touched? Like, are you getting different locations that the book is being sent out, that are you getting a lot of different locations where people are buying the book, or is it kind of a a location based. I think sometimes, the books, are, because I like audio books, and so I can listen to anything anywhere. But do you see something, where you're selling the book or anything?
Well, I just say, I know. Now, I'm not in the distribution end.
Okay, so you don't.
I don't.
That's fine. Yeah.
The only books I send out are, I do have some that if people want an autographed copy, this is a 29 how much is this? 29.95 or something. I don't know. I think it's 29.95. Golly, I'll look on the I don't know. But the point is, for a book this thick these days,
yeah,
I mean,
no, right, and that's
people say that's a lot. I don't know. I think it's it's 500 pages, and I think every page you get money's worth. But I've sent books to Ireland.
Okay,
we've sold to Australia.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
I've sold all over the country, so I don't, just from the little, microscopic view I have of it, it seems to have a universal appeal in the English speaking world.
Yeah.
Where I thought you were going to go was,
okay.
what you bring in right away. Last things, and people are thinking about, well, this is what's going on. Why is he thinking about all these first cup of coffee? And he's a guy who seems like he knows he's going to die today or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, but then it's typical for the book that it kind of whiplashes the faith in. Because right away, we're into last things from a Catholic catechism, and he's uncomfortable with that. Where is that coming from? Is that his guardian angel reminding him of things that he should be thinking about? But the themes there are certain themes that I thought were important for today. This is a book. This is a different book than I would have written 30 years ago, probably. Or maybe even 20 years ago. I wanted to, it's mainly about marriage. It's marriage on hard mode. I wanted to have a estranged couple. The divorce is pending. They've got 2 kids. Their kids are messed up. The parents don't even notice. Life is coming apart for everybody, especially our protagonist, main character, George Abel, who's a defense lawyer, naturally. And so there's no hope for this marriage at the beginning. And I wanted to, throughout the main theme throughout the book is, well, first of all, he meets just at his darkest moment, fairly near the beginning of the book, he does meet another woman who is very alluring, very charming, maybe literally charming, maybe a little too charming, as in an otherworldly sense. I don't know. Maybe she's his guardian angel. Maybe it's like It's a Wonderful Life. It is Christmas Eve after all. Clarence the angel came down. George Bailey was suicidal and kind of saved him from jumping off the bridge. So you don't quite know who this redhead is, other than she seems fascinated with George in this sleazy bar where he ends up after getting his face bitten by a wolf. And what? Spoiler? That's not a spoiler. Maybe a little spoiler. Okay, maybe it's a spoiler, but yeah. But the important thing is okay, just get it all there. No, you got me off track. I don't even know what I was talking about. So the point is, she's the ultimate other woman. So now his wife has kind of already got herself set up with a rich doctor, and she's got her life planned ahead. And here's poor George, who's just a mess, and absolutely no competition at all, no hope of winning his wife back. And all of a sudden, you've got this beautiful redhead. So they end up. And that's kind of where the adventure goes. But the main theme is throughout, how does George deal? He wants to get back with his wife. He really does. But then on the other hand, there's this redhead, and he's not really, his plan A is getting back with his wife, but in the back of his mind, he's always got a plan B. And that's the problem. George, he's always been the smartest kid in the class. And he thinks in his pride, he thinks that he can keep this gorgeous redhead who is madly in love with him at arm's length. He can keep that temptation. She's useful for the task at hand, which, readers will find out what that is. Mm-hmm. In his pride, he thinks he can keep the temptation at arm's length. Nobody's arm's that long. That's not the way you deal with temptation. So a big theme is constantly, how do you deal with temptation in different ways? This is, he's tempted in different ways, and he talks a good talk, and he knows what he should do, but it's always, I'll do it later. Right now, she's useful. Uh-huh. So that's a big theme, is how do you deal with near occasions of sin? And I think Catholics, it's probably not a spoiler to say that you run away as fast as you can. You can't deal with near occasions of sin, and that's the whole point. And so the other thing is marriage. One of the, I guess, if there's the most current thing in the book is that he's driving along, and Red, in her innocent little voice, asks, "Are you really getting a divorce?" And he's, yeah. And she says, "Mrs. Goodman said that was wrong." And he says, "Oh, it used to be, but I read somewhere where they're kind of rethinking all that." And then he's thinking to himself that if, it was hard to keep up with all the changes, but when it came to this particular issue, who was George able to be more Catholic than the Pope? And so I think it is, I think when you talk about divorce and remarriage in a different way, and you seem to be toying with the idea or saying I'll frankly say there's confusion on this issue now. Everybody knows that in the church that's paying attention. For sure. And if you've got a man struggling with temptation, what effect does that have on him to hear his church saying, well, divorce we used to say this, but now maybe, we're kind of rethinking some things. Is that going to stiffen his spine to resist? Or is it going to give him the self-interested, opinion that he's naturally going to want to form, that, well, maybe divorce is okay?
Right. And I think that is such a, in the sense of a topic nowadays with the Pope and everything that's going on. I mean, yeah. I mean, what do you say to, it's kind of like how do you give someone the sense of, oh, okay, this is now up in the air? Because you see, okay, it's 50% of all marriages go to in divorce. I mean, you look at, it's probably higher in Hollywood. I mean, who knows what but I think in the sense of what you're, showing that, there's always confusion in any, especially in the church. I think there's, we need to get our focus on the truth, but sometimes the truth is kind of leaning on a direction that we are like, okay, the laity, I thought Pope, I thought this is what was in the catechism, and now we're rearranging and trying to think of other things, and there's other things that he's, I'm not going to, we could go on in a whole bunch of tangents.
What I wanted to do with these various issues is articulate for ordinary Catholics who are out there who aren't, you know, the most amazing pious. I am definitely, you know, not the greatest Catholic in the world. You know, there's a lot of people who are suffering from a little confusion. They're maybe not the greatest Catholics in the world. And I'm trying to articulate their concerns, their questions, their problems. And I'm doing it all through the novel. I mean, this is definitely a Catholic novel, and there's no, there's a few bad words. There's some violence. It's a novel for grown-ups. I'm not going to try to fool anyone. On the other hand, there's nothing explicit or, you know, I guess I'd rate it PG-13 or whatever.
It's a movie that, you're going. I mean, what movie? Yeah, I mean nowadays, But
it's so I kind of I jokingly describe it as a cross between C.S. Lewis and and Raymond Chandler, because in a way that's the best description I've come up with, because I've kind of used what I know, which is police procedural, to set up this basically crime spree by the good guy. But anyway, so I know that. And so, but also like C.S. Lewis did in his not so much in the Screwtape Letters, but like in his Space Trilogy and some of his other, especially in the Space Trilogy, where he tells a fairly conventional story, but it definitely has a moral content. And so what I wanted to do was to give people a conventional story about a rescue, and that is no spoiler, because the running joke throughout the whole book is that everybody tells them that, you know, while you're on this great mission of yours, you don't understand. You're losing your soul in 1,000 little ways, you know, and that's the truth. Another character says, headlines in heaven are on the inside. Headlines in heaven are not, you know, what Donald Trump did today. Headlines in heaven are Joe Bogaggy didn't have seconds on mashed potatoes. You know, I think it's really the little everyday things that we do spiritually that make the headlines in heaven. And that's kind of the point of the book. You know, if this were a normal book, the story would be this grand rescue attempt that spans the entire state of Illinois, and there's all these crazy schemes and adventures, and what I did with that is, that's there, but that's almost kind of a joke, because the actual story is what's going on in these people's souls and the moral compromises they're making. And okay, and George Abel's a bright guy, and so he's arguing in probably the most critical chapter is drawing lines, and he and his wife are arguing about what wouldn't you do to save your daughter? And she is nothing. There's nothing I wouldn't do. I would do anything. And he is saying, you know, St. Thomas Aquinas said you can't commit a sin to prevent another sin. And she says, she's the mom, she says St. Thomas Aquinas didn't have any kids. So, but this is kind of the moral tension that you get. These people are decent, but not good. They're clever, but not wise. And they're real people. And sometimes you'll be shocked by what they do. And I want you to be shocked. I don't want you to like them too much, but I also want you to identify with their weaknesses. And, but I will tell you this. I started out writing this, and the one thing I knew was that no cheap grace. Everything's going to have a consequence. And it does. And I think that in itself is, you know, I think too many times we expect the happy ending. I'm not going to say whether the ending's happy or not. Actually, this is the first book of a series. So, but, you know, I wanted to make sure that the consequences of moral choices, both on how they shape us and determine our future actions, and and then ultimately decide our immortal fate. Um, how those consequences are very real, and we can't escape them just because the author wants to put a smile on, the reader's face at the end.
Well, Tim, I appreciate that, and hopefully the listeners and the viewers take definitely. Here's the we have the your Gmail, the get contact. We also will put over to your lower third, where you can get the book, and it's on the hopeandlifepress.com, and you can also, I think it's on Amazon. And we can post that onto our show notes.
Or if you want an autographed copy, you can email me, and I'll be happy to autograph for you.
That would be, yes. And we will also, we have a ton of people with the giveaway. Thank you for everybody signing up, and we'll find out who's the winner. I will let that give that information out, and right now we're at 10 o'clock. That was a fast hour.
That was fast. But so much for the questions. Sorry.
Yeah. But Tim, if you would like to end in prayer and any little, final thoughts, that would be great. And thank you again for your time. And we will, thank you for all. We'll definitely send any questions over to you if we have any. And I just appreciate your time tonight on the show.
Yeah, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I would pray that this book, which is the labor of a lot of things, which including my ego, to be honest, like any writer, but I would hope that I was listening to at least part of what God was wanting me to do in writing this particular book, and addressing the important issues of sanctity of marriage and other issues that seem to be surrounded by confusion today. I hope and pray that God puts this book in the hands of people that are just ordinary people who can read it and maybe be strengthened by it. That's my prayer, and I also would like to pray for my beautiful wife. Give thanks to God for her and for my family, and for this opportunity to come and speak to you and so many other people. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. My Son, the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen. Well, Tim, thank you very much. Everybody in the chat room, thank you for everybody. Just a lot of just a great hour of learning about how much we need to know as Catholics. We have hiccups, and I mean, we have to look at everybody as Jesus, and also to see in the morals that we do what we can, how valuable really for the book and all, and what you were mentioning, Tim, just now in your prayer, how much marriage is so important. And I want to give back a blessing to my wife that is really gung-ho about the game tonight, and I appreciate you, Tim, for coming on. Make sure everybody to check out for the show notes for any links to Tim's book.
Oh,
yep, go ahead.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
There's a separate the Bears blog, St. Corbinian's Bears blog is separate. That's entirely separate. This is not a novelized version of that blog. That's entirely different. There is a Judging Angels blog that's separate. And there's a link from the Bears blog, or you can just Google Judging Angels, and eventually everybody knows how to find a blog now. So
we can.
If you have any special questions or comments or something, we'd be welcome to have you at that.
We
author's blog.
we will put up your email and everything onto the show notes, and we'll definitely have that up on the Fiat Ministry Network Facebook page and website. We'll have it, in all our social medias. And again, I want to thank Hope and Life Press, and I really want to thank them for allowing us to do this interview tonight. They are supporting Fiat, and we support them back. And I thank you, Tim, for being. There's other authors, and we're hoping to have others. And you're welcome back on
anytime.
and
I gotta say, I could not have, as a first time author, I could not have had a better publisher. I really appreciate that.
That's great, and I appreciate that. And it's really nice to have people that are supporting other. I mean, I think we need to support each other. There's
absolutely,
sometimes we get too caught up in ourselves, and we need to help each other out. I think that's one thing about Fiat. We have so many people helping each other out, and we are a platform. I want to let everybody know Fiat Ministry Network is a platform. If you want to get on, please come. We will definitely have Hope and Life Press, definitely other authors on. Tim, again, thank you.
Thank you, Kent.
I appreciate the time, and we will call it a evening. And Missy's show will be next week. We're going to continue the series on Crete. What am I trying to say? Crete. We'll see the next. Hugh Owens is the guest. So moving on, and we're gonna call it a night. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Kent, very much. Good night.